All right, this is the coxal bone. Now, the coxal bone is actually 3 bones that are fused together. So this whole structure is the coxal bone, or os coxa. It consists of this big wing-like portion called the ilium. Then it has the ischium, and then the pubis on this side. So we're going to take a closer look at each of those. So again, the ilium is pretty easy. It's the big wing at the top. If you find this really big indentation right here, and you can basically fit like 3 of my fingers right here, but if you cut it kind of in half, from there up is all ilium, okay? This ridge of bone on the edge is called the iliac crest, and also part of the ilium, this big notch right here, is called the greater sciatic notch. That's where your sciatic nerve runs through, okay? Now remember, we cut this big indentation in half, so if you followed that on around, that would come about halfway down between this big notch and this bump right here. That bump right there is called the ischial spine, so that should let you know this side is the ischium, okay? So basically, from here down and from here across, even halfway of the big hole right here, all of that over there is ischium, which makes this side over here from here over the pubis, okay? The pubis has the little pointed part, and then this really big hole right here is called the obturator foramen. The really big indentation we keep talking about, that's called the acetabulum, and that is where the head of the femur is going to sit. So this is the head of the femur, the big smooth part right here. So it would fit in here like this, okay? Now, with femur, this is the greater trochanter, the big knot right here on the back side. Coming diagonally down from that, that's the lesser trochanter. And then, of course, the head is carried on a neck. So this narrow portion right here is the neck. The front side of the femur, so this is the front of the leg. The front side is relatively smooth if you feel of it, okay? Now, we know that, of course, at the distal end, this forms your knee. So over this smooth surface right here, this is where your kneecap, your patella would sit. So this is your patella, looks kind of like a rock. And it sits on top of this smooth surface. This smooth surface is called the patellar surface. Now, on either side, the sides out here that kind of flare out, those are called epicondyles. The best thing to do, what you're going to want to look for right now, is the medial side of this bone. The best way to find that is to find the head of the bone. The head is going to always point toward the medial side, okay, which means the greater trochanter is going to be on the lateral side. But you find the head, and you follow it down, which means this side over here is the medial epicondyle, which makes this side over here the lateral epicondyle. Just remember, if you had the other bone for the other leg, it would be the opposite because the head would be on the other side. Now, if I take this bone and I flip it to the back, so now I'm at the back of the knee, okay? These 2 big projections right here are called condyles. Again, find the head, because I flipped it over, the head's now on this side. So that means this one is medial condyle, which makes this one the lateral condyle, okay? Between the 2 condyles, this big notch that's cut out, okay, I can fit like 3 of my fingers. That's called the intercondylar notch. And remember, inter means between. If you remember from chapter 1, the back of the knee is called popliteal. So this region right here, this surface above the 2 condyles, is called the popliteal surface. Now, I said earlier that the front of the bone is relatively smooth. If you pick up this bone and feel it, you can actually feel a ridge of bone running right up the middle. That is called the linea aspera. And then if you get back up here toward the top portion, the proximal end, you can see, so this was linea aspera here, and then you see how it kind of flares off out here to the side. This is under the greater trochanter, but that little ledge right there is called the gluteal tuberosity. Gluteal tuberosity. So that was the femur. Now, connecting under the femur, now of course you would have your patella here, but you're going to have your tibia, which is this bone here, and then of course you're also going to have your fibula, which is going to be on the outside edge. Now these 2 bones don't actually go together. This one's for the right leg and this one's for the left leg. So these 2 don't actually go together, so it's kind of going to be hard for me to show you how these fit. But because this should actually be on the lateral side, okay? So we won't use that this way. We'll just look at the bone structures. All right, so tibia. It's got a large flat surface up here. And what I always say is it looks like a capital T, okay? That bump right there on the front is called the tibial tuberosity. And then the only other structure you have to know is this one, where it points down right here. It's called the medial malleolus, all right? It's the medial malleolus because this is the medial bone of the leg, okay? And then we have the fibula. Fibula is stick-like is what we usually say. And the only structure you have to know is this end down here is the lateral malleolus. Now, if I had two bones that fit together, then what they would somewhat look like would be something like this on this distal end down here, where your two malleoli were on opposite sides, just like your styloid processes were on your radius and ulna, okay? The only other bone that we have is the foot, okay? And so just like with the hand, you had phalanges, your toes. Your big toe, just like the thumb, only has two phalanx, a distal and a proximal. The other four have a distal, a middle, or intermediate, and a proximal. So all four of those have the same. These long bones here are called metatarsals. And then, of course, collectively, this group right here that form your ankles are called your tarsals. This really large bone right here, so all of this right here is called the calcaneus, and it forms the heel of your foot. This bone right here, so notice it's all of this right in here, that forms the talus, and it's the one that's smooth on the top of it. In front of talus, that's navicular, goes all the way across here. Then you have three cuneiform bones. Again, find the medial part of your foot. That's going to be your big toe, right? So medial side, this is medial cuneiform. Next to it is intermediate cuneiform. Intermediate means in between something. And then, of course, this one under the middle toe is called the lateral cuneiform. So again, it was medial, intermediate, lateral. And then this really big bone right here is called the cuboid bone. Okay?